So there's two ways to solve some basic percent questions, and I'm going to encourage you to understand approach 2. If you've done approach 1 in the past, it doesn't hurt my feelings, but in the long run, approach 2 is going to be more realistic, especially as the percent questions get more complicated. And approach 2 is, I think, the most practical in real life use. Some of you may have been taught the is over of, percent over 100. If you weren't, don't even worry about this. This always bothers me a little bit if you're taught this as a trick, because to me, what the heck is an is over an of? I would rather think of this as a part of a whole. So 15 is 1% of 20. 15 is the part of 20, and what we don't know is the percent. So you could fill in 15 is the part of the whole 20 is equal to what percent over 100. And you could solve this, and this is where we had our rational equations. I would not cross multiply this. I would just multiply both sides by 100, giving me 75. Keep in mind your answer is not 75. Our answer was what percent, so it would be 75%. Now that is not the way I'd approach it, and the only reason I want to bring that up is because if you already know it that way and you want to do it that way, feel free, but just understand that that will get more complicated as the questions get more complicated. What I would rather do is just literally read this as an equation. 15 equals what percent x of or times 20. The percentage of or times the total equals or equals the part. So the percent, which I don't know, x times the total, 20, is equal to the part, 15. What percent times 20 is 15? You could solve this by dividing both sides by 20 and get that x is equal to 15 divided by 20. Now be careful. Is not 75. It's 0.75. Right now this answer is a, and we have it in decimal form. They wanted this as a percent. So you have to move that decimal twice to get it as 75%. That to me is actually a more viable approach. Keep in mind that's still not the way I would answer this. I would have just thought of it as 15 is the part of the whole. 15 out of 20 is 0.75 is 75%. So if you think of your fractions, you can still use a version of approach 2 which says that a percentage, if I take this and I solve this for a percentage, the percentage is equal to the part over the whole. So I literally could divide just the 15 by the 20 and then turn it into a percent. Approaches different. 23% of 12 is what? If you want to sit there and set it up as is over of, the 23 is the 23% over 100. The 12 is the of, or the whole, so it goes on the bottom, and the is what we don't know. It goes right here. I don't recommend this. I would never do it this way, because here's what I know. I could just translate this into an equation. So yes, this is okay, but no, this is not the way I would approach it. 23% as a decimal would be what? 0.23 of, or times, the whole, is equals what? Literally, it's just 0.23 times 12. If I ever want to know a percentage of something, I don't need to set up an equation with fractions. I take the decimal times the total. What is 23% of 12? Well, that's just 0.23 times 12, or 2.76. If I solve the one on the right, some of you are going to do 23 times 12, and then divide that by 100. So you're going to do 23 times 12, and then divide that by 100. And the answer is, uh-oh, did I mess up somewhere? I just did it twice. Let me do this real quick. Technology, I love it. As a decimal. See, 2.76. Bleh. I don't recommend it, but it is an option. What if I want to know 15 is what 20% of what number? That's a little more complicated. I don't really have a shortcut for that, but I still would write it as an equation. 15 is or equals 20% as a decimal times what? See, now I can solve for x really easily. Inverse operation says if I want to undo multiplying, I just divide both sides by that decimal. 15 divided by 0.2. How about 75? Notice this time it's not a percent because we weren't solving for the percent. They gave us the percent. We just said 20% of 75 is 15, which I can check really easily because 20% or 0.2 times 75 does equal 15. 45 out of 50 is what percent? A couple ways of approaching this. See, I can sit there and go, okay, the percentage, x, times the total is equal to the part. That is not how I do it. Some of you would do is over of, but that would kind of fall apart here because I'm not using the is and the of in the same exact locations. So what would I do? Well, 45 out of 50 is part of whole. I would just put 45 over 50. Figure that out as a decimal. And then turn that decimal into a percent. That is how I would approach these in real life. It's still building off the equation. To solve for x, I would divide both sides by the 50. Notice I have 45 divided by 50. X would equal 0.9. Moving it twice, x would equal 90%. But here on the right is how I would do this if I was given this question in real life. So once again, I would approach this question like in real life. I would just take that 7.38, which is the part, and divide it by the total, 98.4. And that gives me 0.075. Moving it twice, 7.5%. That's how I would really do that question if it was given to me in real life. If you like the equation, you can set this up. 7.38 is or equals what percent x times 98.4. Notice we would divide both sides by 98.4 and get that x is equal to 0.075. You need to move that twice to get 7.5%. 250%. 250% of what number is 152.5? Well, 250% as a decimal would be 2.5 times what is 152.5. I don't think I'd be doing this one quickly in my head. This is when I would need the equation. 250% times what is 152.5. Dividing both sides by 2.5. X is equal to 152.5 divided by 2.5. How about 61? And I could check that. 250%, 2.5 times 61. About 61 should be 152.5. 35% of what is 21? Once again, these last ones are not ones I'm able to do in my head, but I would still go to the equation. 35% is 0.35 of times what is 21. And then I can solve that by dividing both sides by. So that x is equal to 21 divided by 0.35. About 60. What number is 85% of 40? This, right off the bat, when I start setting this up, I'm not needing to write an equation to do this. If I ever want just a percentage of a total, I'm just doing 0.85 times 40. If you want to set up the equation, x equals 0.85 times 40. But I'm wanting you to see there's a couple versions of these that you should be able to do very quickly with a calculator, not in your head, but very quickly using 0.85 times 40. And getting 34. This is a very basic intro, but I want to make a note. There are two types that you should keep in mind. There are two types of percentage questions that in real life I should be able to solve quickly with technology if I ever want a percentage times an amount or a percentage of a whole. I just take that, I take that decimal times the total. That was like our last example there. If I ever want to know 85% of 40, 0.85 times 40, I type it in my calculator, I hit enter, boom, I got it. The second one is if I ever have A out of B, or they give me a part in the whole and they want to know what percent, I just set up the ratio. I take the A over B, I end up with a decimal, and I turn that decimal into a percent. We had a couple examples of that where I don't know the percentage. 45 out of 50, I would just put 45 over 50. Take the decimal, turn it into a percent. If I had, where was the other one right there? I thought there was another one. Oh, right here. Whenever I don't know the percent, part over the whole, turn it to a decimal, move it twice. So those are the two that I would do really quickly without setting up formal equations, just in real life. For this class, you're fine setting up the equation. If you're really comfortable with the is over of, feel free to keep setting those up. I don't recommend it, but that is still your choice. So we're going to build on this. We're going to be building this into some word questions, and that's really going to be where you see those equations kind of work out and become very practical.